We were in the middle of our tournament where my friend John said he found a body in the bushes over there. I ran over there because I'm a healing monk to try and help, but obviously my magic wasn't strong enough because the dude's body was missing a head. So my friend decided to try and use a necromancer spell, which didn't work, which I knew it wouldn't. And apparently we contaminated the crime scene because that spell uses a lot of glitter.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
I gotta tell you, you brighten my day, ma'am. All right?
That's what the last guy said, and then he sued me.
Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back. Welcome back to the channel. Super glad to have everybody. Wow, there's a lot of people waiting today. Hey, Larry. What's up, Christina? What's happening, Amy? I would love to just greet and catch up with everybody, but there's quite a few of you. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right to introducing our guest. So, surprise, I was able to get connected with a very special defense attorney. He has his own practice out of Boston. He has a lot of great insights. He's got his own little TikTok channel. It's called Not.Guilty. If you'd like to find him on TikTok, very, very funny, very bright. I think a lot of us are going to appreciate his views and what he has to say. So I know, I need a better light. I'm working on it. All righty, guys. Well, without any further ado, please give the warmest welcome on YouTube to attorney Joe Simons. Hey, I don't have any sound effects, but welcome.
No, I feel like I should have like a intro song, but like when I walk into the courtroom, when I'm going to trial,
You
like
know
a
what?
professional wrestler walking in.
For the next time, I'll have one ready for you.
All right.
You can maybe have like a big wrestling belt on too.
Yeah, exactly. I'll
It'll
walk
be great.
to the cheers and jeers of the crowd.
Well, I'm very, very excited. I'd like to, first of all, just thank you for your time and for letting us kind of pick your brain a little bit. You definitely have the unique experience and knowledge with, you know, a lot of what's going on in Massachusetts. It's a little hard to navigate how, you know, what's normal, what's not normal. So yeah. We're really thankful for your experience and for what you do. So can you tell us a little bit about your practice in Boston?
Yeah, and I'll preface it by saying I'm not as like boots on the ground as far as Karen Reed and her case as probably you are, but maybe I can have some interesting insights because I know the court. I've been to Norfolk Superior Court. I know, I've been in front of Judge Cannoni. I know some of the lawyers involved. And so even though I'm not as up to speed on all the latest, maybe I can still offer some feedback from a guy that's local and kind of knows the lay of the land here. So yeah, I've been practicing for, got out in 2011 and started my own practice in 2012. So I've been criminal defense attorney the whole time. I started out as a solo practitioner and I've slowly built up a little bit of a practice. So right now I've got myself, I've got 3 attorneys who work for me and a paralegal. And that's sort of the whole team that we've got here. And we primarily handle criminal defense cases in Massachusetts, Boston area, but kind of all over, and anything from like drunk driving to murder. And I don't know, everything in between. I'm licensed in New York, but I don't do a lot there. I've also, last year I had a trafficking case in San Diego. So I went out to California, Beach to handle a case there, which was interesting. But for the most part, I'm just here in the Boston area in greater Massachusetts.
And then you also have some experience in federal court as well, correct?
I do. Yeah. So actually, funny enough, I just met Marty Weinberg for the first time because we had a client in common in a federal case this past year. So yeah, I do a fair amount in federal court too. I'd say mostly state court. There's more cases there in general, but yeah, from time to time, I've got, a lot of times it's like drug trafficking or conspiracy or white collar crimes in federal court.
Sure. So what would you say, just from that little bit of time that you did get to meet and work with him, How would you characterize Marty Weinberg?
Well, I met him and Mike Pabian, who I think is also helping him out with this federal thing. They do a lot of work together. I heard of him because he's been a guy that's already, his reputation has been out there for a long time as a great lawyer. So yeah, I met him. I thought he was sharp. What struck me is he's 78 years old and he's super sharp with it, still practicing. I thought he was a bright guy. I thought he was intellectually curious, and I liked him. He was charming.
He definitely still has a lot of energy. You wouldn't have guessed his age. Just
no, if he hadn't told me, and I hope I'm not blow him out there. No, I have a lot of respect for him. I think it gives me hope. Maybe when I'm 78, I'll still be hopefully hitting it as hard as he is.
Right. Well, you're as old as you feel, is what I'm told. So
yeah, then I guess I'm like 18.
There you go. Lucky you. So you also have some very unique background with Mr. Esquire David Yannetti. You were mentored by him, right?
Yeah. So when I was first getting started, and I always knew I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney, when I came out, it was a little bit after the recession, so there was not a lot of jobs, especially criminal defense. I mean, you either find a local, small firm that's hiring, or it's not the same as like a big firm where they're actively hiring and they have certain cycles. You kind of just meet somebody. So anyway, I met a lot of lawyers. One of them was him. I really liked him. He was a great attorney and a nice person. So he kind of helped me get started, and he was a mentor of mine for a number of years as I was just getting off the ground as a baby lawyer. And I'm just so glad that I was. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for him. I've actually second sat him on a couple of trials early on when I was really, kind of following him around, learning the ropes of being a lawyer and meeting with clients. And he's probably the guy that if I were ever in trouble, I would call him and he would represent me.
Yeah. So Karen made a good choice then.
I think so. Absolutely. I'm biased, but he's my favorite lawyer, both because of his legal abilities, his personality, everything. He's amazing.
Absolutely. He seems very level-headed, he doesn't get too quick to be heated. And, we all really appreciate that about him. Is there anything that he taught you that you still use today? Any particular lessons that you, even now having your own practice, still put to use?
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons. I even, still once in a while, if I get stuck on something, I'll call him for advice because he's the type of guy that's thoughtful and level-headed. And, I think one of the things, picking your battles, trying to take cases that you feel like you can really do a good job, that you can, bond with a client, do really well. And I think he's the type of guy that he's got a successful practice, but I think he does it because he's honest with clients. You always set reasonable expectations. You do your very best, you give it your all, and you make sure that if you're going to take a case, you don't take a case unless you feel like you can give it 100% and that you're going to do as good as any lawyer could do on the case. And I felt like that, those are lessons that really stuck with me.
So to piggyback off that, you mentioned, choosing clients that you feel that you can work really well with. Would you say that has a lot to do with how you choose what cases you do take on?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would have done necessarily differently, but I think those were things that I learned that just, you make sure that there's going to be a lot of potential clients that call you over the years, and there's a lot of opportunities, but really making sure that you feel like you can do right by the person because they're, clients are relying on you and they're going through heavy stuff. So if you feel like your heart's not going to be in it, or you feel like it's not going to be a good match for whatever, better to turn down the case and, forget about that potential fee and move on to something else where you feel like you can really give it your all and give that client what they deserve and good representation. Sure.
Well, and I mean, things are going to get deeply personal, at least for that client. So I can definitely see you wanting to make sure that at least with your personalities and how you're able to treat each other, you need to be kind of on a similar wavelength, so to speak, and be able to treat each other with a certain level of respect.
Yeah, and just kind of see things, and you don't have to necessarily agree on everything, but just that you're going to be able to have a good working relationship, and you're going to be able to, make sure that you have the time and the energy and the desire to really help this person navigate a system that very often they've never seen before. I mean, a lot of the clients that I have personally over the years are people who are good people, and they just either by mistake or by making a bad decision or just some series of events, they end up in a situation, and whether they're wrongfully accused or whether they did something out of character, it's not the norm for them. So they're in a court system that's completely foreign. So it's like I have to educate each client, like sort of from the ground up. And so you really have to make sure that you're able to give that person the energy and the time and the education that they need, that they deserve.
100%, 100%. So you said you've made, you've taken cases in Norfolk.
Yeah.
How many do you, just as a guesstimate, how many would you say that you've tried in Norfolk County?
Probably cases like in Norfolk Superior Court specifically, probably like, I don't know, 20 or 30. So I wouldn't say like a ton, but a decent amount.
Gotcha. Do you find just in Massachusetts that see that Allie's already asking this, is it really a standard to not state the basis of your objection in Massachusetts courts? Is that typical?
There might be a rule somewhere that says you're just supposed to say objection, and then if the judge wants you to elaborate, you're supposed to elaborate. I think in practice, though, more often people will say, objection leading, objection calls for speculation.
Argumentative, yeah, okay.
I don't know what the rules say. Maybe I should. I'm a lawyer, but I'm just saying, typically as a practice, people would say objection, and then they would say a word or two about what the hearsay or.
Okay. Now, and would you say that has a little more to do with how the judge, that specific judge, just kind of wants things to go in their own courtroom, almost like being in a school and going through your day? Different professors have, different preferences as to how their classrooms run.
Yeah, I think each judge has their own proclivities, and that's one example. Maybe if you find a judge that has given you feedback and says, don't do that, or just say objection, or you get the vibe that they don't like it. Another thing is some judges, when you're questioning a witness and you want to give the witness something to look at, to impeach them with, or to authenticate, some judges want you to ask permission every time. May I approach the witness? And then some judges just say, you've got free reign. You don't have to ask me, and you can just go up as you please. Things like that do kind of vary between judges. So you got to get to know what their preferences are.
100%. I can definitely see that. Not even just in the legal system. I can see that in all different walks of life, so to speak.
Yeah. But by the way, just sorry to interrupt. Somewhere back there in the last few minutes, somebody said I look too young to know Auntie Bev. No, they said judge. They said judge. But no, I don't know her personally, so I just know her as. I mean, I've been in front of her as a judge. I don't mean that I'm friends with her or that I knew her before she was on the bench. I just mean I've seen her as a judge, in cases that I've had. So just wanted to clarify that I'm not friends with her.
Gotcha. I mean, yeah, it's as much as in a professional relationship, you can be completely understandable. So I've seen you give some, a couple posts online about things that have happened in the Karen Reed case, such as the SJC ruling. What details about that case first drew your attention to it?
It's funny. Before I came on here, I was thinking of how is it that this case has captured so much attention from people that don't even live in Massachusetts, and even people that are here. I mean, before I answer the question, it's amazing that you don't see cases like this where people go and wait for her throughout the day in court, day after day. I mean, I didn't go there, but I'd see, just like the rest of us on the news, there'd be people lined up, waiting, cheering her on. I mean, this is like no other case. So to answer your question, I don't know exactly what it is, but I imagine that some of the ingredients are that there's a cop that's dead, which, isn't every day. But moreover, what appears to be corruption and deceit and actions that are subversive on the part of people who are supposed to be protecting the Constitution and upholding people's rights. And I think it's to me, probably that's a big part of like all these police officers who are now like covering things up and who appear to be lying, and the people that are supposed to be following the law more than any of us are now found to have not done that and lying under oath and all these things. So I think that just it's salacious. It's awful. It's it sort of breeds interest.
Definitely. And as someone who practices in Massachusetts, I mean, I'm sure that could make you wonder, is it me next? Is it one of my clients next who's going to be having to fight so hard to get discovery? Or, is it going to happen to me where now the prosecution is maybe one day going to be fighting to keep evidence away from one of my clients?
Yeah, and to a lesser extent, that stuff does happen. I mean, there are times when cases that aren't on the news, you deal with discovery violations, and it's never going to be a perfect system. So some people might look at it and say, well, geez, I don't even want to take part in it. My view is that if I have the capabilities of impacting even my set of clients and making things better for them, then I feel like it's an obligation that I should do to try to make things better. But yeah, it's not a perfect system. And I think it's good that there's a spotlight on all of this. And but it's amazing, even like the consequences for some of the law enforcement officers have come so late, like that trooper who finally, I think, got suspended or fired. I don't, again, I'm not as familiar, but it took until after the trial happened. Like, my God, I mean, all this was pretty much out there. Like,
yeah, he's not even fired yet. So as of right now, he's suspended pending, an IA hearing, and he's had either one or two hearings so far, and they still haven't made an official announcement, and it's been, quite a long time. So
So it's incredible to me, even with all the spotlight and all the attention, things that should be swiftly done just are
exactly.
not. So it's kind of stunning in that respect, because on a daily basis, when there's nobody really looking at it except for me and the prosecutor and the judge, it's still frustrating, but I kind of understand, like, okay, it is what it is, and I'm just fighting as best I can. But I mean, here where you got the whole world kind of looking at this, and there's still no consequences for the lies and the deceit and the laws being violated. It's incredible.
Exactly. You would think that just for PR's sake, that they would go ahead and deal with these things as quickly and as cleanly as they can. So it almost makes you wonder, are they wanting to kind of kick the can down the street, so to speak, so that maybe that way they don't have to say during the second trial that this trooper lost his job for the way that this investigation was handled?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Who knows? But yeah, I would have thought that they would have, like you said, dealt with this a lot more swiftly.
Yeah. Well, I think they're used to being able to fly under the radar a lot, because there's so many cases that you would never hear about and people on the stream would never have known about because the news isn't covering it. It's just, it happens on a day-to-day basis, and the police cover for each other and they cover for themselves. If they make mistakes, they try to rectify, and and not everybody has the type of legal team that Karen has. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have any money, so they have a public defender that, while they may be, I'm not trying not to say anything bad about public defenders, but they have a big caseload. It's hard. They don't have
Right.
time,
And they don't have the resources to give that kind of attention.
Yeah. So, and when you think about how hard her lawyers are fighting and how good of a quality of representation she's getting, and she's still having a hard time, and they're still not easily getting evidence that they should be entitled to. You can see why the everyday person would just be steamrolled.
Definitely. That's something that I've felt, personally very strongly about for a very long time. And it's very difficult even to be able to get a public defender They evaluate, your income, the size of your household, and things of the like. But it's very hard to qualify. You almost have to be. I mean, in some states, you have to be almost collecting welfare to be able to qualify for one of those. So if you're in the middle class, in a lot of cases, you are realistically forced into maybe taking a plea bargain for something that you didn't do, because it's still hard to afford a private defense attorney, especially depending on the charges.
Right, exactly. There's a huge portion, like you said, of people who are kind of in the middle that if you're really poor, then you get a public defender. But if you're like, if you've got a serious charge and it's going to cost you tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for something like a murder case, most people just don't have it. And so you're either going to just find some cheap lawyer who's probably worse than a public defender, because if they're taking a case for short money, they probably don't have a great practice, or you don't have a lawyer, or it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Raka Fraka. Thank you so much for your super chat. So he says, hypothetically speaking, if the level of law enforcement and judicial corruption is as bad as it seems, what would be the remedy? Is it federal involvement?
Well, I think that so for law enforcement, it might be a little bit easier in terms of remedies. If it's a criminal remedy, meaning that somebody's going to be criminally charged, it's really in the hands of probably the U.S. Attorney's Office to decide if they're going to bring forward charges. I mean, you can lobby, like her attorneys can lobby them to take out charges, but ultimately it's in the hands of the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute the corruption. And you always hope that nobody's above the law and that they would be seriously looking at that stuff. But in terms of a private action, after this is all over, if she were to want to file a lawsuit, it would probably be like a civil 1983 claim. And it's very difficult because you can sue the feds, but they have qualified immunity. You may have talked about that on the show from time to time, which is tough. I actually, even though I do criminal defense, I did once take a civil rights case, and I could go down the rabbit hole with that, but suffice it to say, very difficult to overcome qualified immunity. Judicial, unfortunately, anything that's done in a judicial capacity, at least from the limited research I've done, there's absolute immunity. So from civil suit, I mean, you can still be federally prosecuted for crimes, but in terms of like a private right to get redress, if Karen were to sue a Judge Canoni or something, she wouldn't be able to. Even if it was found that there was violations, there's just a absolute immunity. So you really can't privately do it.
So civilly, though, she could potentially go after, say, like, let's say that she is able to prove that there was manipulated evidence. She could eventually civilly go after maybe the Massachusetts State Police or the Canton PD, or, knowingly holding, manipulating evidence that is exculpatory.
Right. She could do that, and same with individual officers who took part in those types of things. She could. But also, just not that it came up in the question, but prosecution-wise, prosecutors also have the same type of immunity, similar to judges. So as long as it's within their judicial or their prosecutorial sort of capacity, you really can't sue them. You'd have to prove that something went so far beyond what their role is that to be able to sue them.
Makes all the sense in the world. Look, all ye who are here, at the sense being made. Carrie, thank you so much for your 10. So have you ever seen an investigation quite like this? Have you had any cases where police failed to do the most basic of procedures, like knocking on the doors of the house involved and also neighbors, or taking photos, or filling out chain of custody?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is yes and no. So here's what I mean. I've had a lot of cases where I've won trials because the police did not even the basic of tasks, things where you'd expect neighbors to be questioned, or even if it's like a question of somebody's path of travel, asking, have you checked to see if anybody has Ring doorbells or security cameras, or things that you'd expect to be like obvious police work? And the answer is, yeah, a lot of cases, the police take down a report because somebody said something happened, but these are smaller cases. So when I said yes and no, yes, in a lot of like smaller cases where there's not a death involved or a huge prison sentence, cases that we would have here more often in like Massachusetts district court. So like misdemeanors, lower level felonies, stuff like that. Very common for the police not to follow up. But in murder, I've had murder cases and things, similar, home invasions, rapes, things that are significant. No, not as much. I mean, maybe sometimes there's things that I can point out that they could have done and they didn't, but for the most part, those basic tasks, they do. If it's a death case, they would have enough officers, enough resources that typically you'd expect them to interview the people around, take photos, look for surveillance, things like that in a serious case.
And in those cases too, you would typically find that evidence, like let's say the blood that was collected in solo cups and not kept in a container, a real evidence container, wouldn't that evidence have not been admissible because it was contaminated?
Yeah, and I think typically you'd argue that before the trial, and typically you'd have an expert that you'd consult with to talk about the reasons why it's so important to follow the procedures, because you can't rely on collection of blood or some other skin cells or whatever it is if it's outside of the normal agreed upon and scientifically proven protocols, because things get stale or things can change in a different way than what we can scientifically sort of prove. So yeah, I think absolutely. And again, typically with big things like this, there's typically more of a checking and double checking that things are done correctly, because they don't want to jeopardize big investigations and big cases.
And like Charlie's saying, it's a fellow officer, so this is a huge investigation. So I would at least expect for it to be what you would call airtight,
Right, exactly. Doing everything by the books, making sure that they're not giving the defense any sort of arguments to try to keep things out.
Right. So, and that's kind of the job of someone like yourself, is to find those discrepancies and to highlight them to a judge, to a jury, and hopefully those are used to either help acquit or keep certain things out. But what's unique, at least to me, about this case is that the defense wants evidence. They're not trying to suppress anything. They actually want every bit of information, good or bad, out there, which that really has kind of captivated a lot of us, that they're not trying to hide anything.
Right. No, exactly. And I think that's sometimes a judgment call, or sometimes it's because they believe the client is innocent and they want the whole thing out. It can depend. You have to kind of judge, is this going to be more helpful or harmful to try to bring it in versus try to suppress it? And it sounds like in this case, they've decided that they want the jury and the court system to see everything as it is.
And that brings me to another question for you. Do you have a easier time, a harder time, or is it different for you at all if you firmly believe in your heart that someone that you're representing is factually innocent?
To be honest, it's harder. It's harder because there's more pressure. I told you at the outset that I take cases where I feel like I can really work well with a client, give it my all. And my goal always is to try to get them off. I mean, that's my job. If the system works, it's not my job to see what the prosecution's doing or that the judge is doing. If the prosecution messes up, I'm going to exploit it. That is my job. And that's how we make sure that people have their rights. I'd rather have a guilty person go free than an innocent person get wrongfully accused. So
yeah, so does Increase Mather. And I mean, honestly, most of Western legal systems have that exact belief. They would rather see a guilty person walk than see someone be wrongfully imprisoned.
But to go, so I'm just prefacing that just to say I fight hard for all my clients, but I almost prefer it if all things being equal, it's easier for me to have a client that I kind of know, like, all right, they did it. I'm still going to fight like hell for them. And I hope I win, and I'm going to try to win. And thankfully, most of the time that does happen. But gosh, if I have an innocent client, there's just an added stress. It's like, now if I mess up, like it just feels like it's all falling on me. I think I've talked to other criminal attorneys too, and I think that's kind of a universal feeling, is that obviously it's more satisfying when you win because you're like, okay, great, I won for a client that really deserved it. But it's hard. It's a lot of pressure.
I can see that. I can see that. You and I can see you almost feeling like it's almost all on you too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that might have a lot to do with why, even though Yannetti, just for example, is typically someone who's a little more reserved and mild-mannered in his courtroom demeanor, he for himself at least has been, he's been pretty strong in the way that he has advocated, which indicates to me that, this is a legal team who truly believes that their client is factually innocent.
Yeah, that's the sense I get. I mean, I don't have any inside knowledge of, what they know or what they don't know, obviously, because that's between them. But I get the impression too that they really do believe in her innocence, and that they feel like they're really on the right side of this beyond just their normal professional obligations.
Right. Thank you so much for your 5, aka the cat lady. She asks if Bev does decide to remove Jackson, we're referring to Judge Cannone, can that be added to the habeas brief? So this was mentioned back in the green room, where now there's been a writ for habeas corpus presented, and they're going to be hearing her appellate attorney, Marty Weinberg, on the 5th of March. So I don't know if you saw that hearing, Joe, where there may be, without hearing both sides, Judge Cannone she alluded to the possibility of having Alan Jackson's Pro Hoc VJ revoked. So
I didn't see the whole hearing, but I saw the headlines, and I saw like the little clip of her saying like this could have grave implications or whatever she said. And from what I understood from the headlines is it seems like the prosecution is claiming that Alan Jackson had told the court he didn't prepare with certain experts, and then some emails maybe seemed to show that he actually had. So it seems like is that more or less what it is, that the prosecution is saying that he lied to the court?
Yes and no. So what they're using, though, there was no affidavit to go with it. It wasn't in any motion. It was just brought up, in this hearing from the clear blue sky. And the supporting evidence that Hank Brennan gave were a couple of emails that had absolutely no date or timestamp on them. And that leaves us wondering, is this while there was a court order not to prep them? Because now if it's in preparation for the second trial, it could just, it would be fine. But for the first trial, they had represented in court that they hadn't been speaking with them other than coordinating their testimony. Like, when are you going to fly down? Yeah. Here's where you'll stay, that kind of stuff, and asking about their background. So yeah, if it was before June 10th of 2024 that these emails happened, then we could be dealing with misrepresentation. But since there's no timestamp, we don't even know if it's a problem.
If it would truly turned out to be a misrepresentation, then I could see him being removed. But look, I don't know Alan Jackson at all. I do know David Yannetti, and I can't imagine that David or anybody that he's co-counsel with would do anything that would be unethical, cross the line in any way. I don't see that. So I think we don't know the full picture. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but my guess is that there's going to be some sort of a reasonable response and explanation, and that that they didn't violate any sort of ethical rules or misrepresent.
Sure.
But to get back to the cat lady's question, the habeas you couldn't automatically add it to the habeas. So let's say Judge Cannoni removes Alan Jackson, they could then appeal that decision to the SJC in Massachusetts. And if the SJC either takes it up and denies it, or meaning affirms the decision, or if they decline to accept the case to even consider, then you can go to the federal court. So I guess yes and no, but they would have to take these procedural steps before they can just go and amend the petition for habeas.
Okay. Okay. And then here's another really great question from Michael. Thanks for your question. Will the habeas corpus force the Commonwealth to delay and then comply with the new or modified Rule 14?
Oh, that's interesting. So for those of you who don't know, Rule 14 is the Massachusetts criminal rule that dictates discovery. You guys may have talked about this on your show, but essentially there's a lot of mandatory discovery, and there's been a revamping of the requirements of Rule 14 for prosecutors to turn over certain things to the defense. And so my belief is that if the new Rule 14 is in effect for a case that's pending, then it would apply to the case. I mean, it wouldn't have, anything that's already been resolved is done. But yeah, I would think that if the case is still pending, any rule from discovery obligations would come into play.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Oh, Nan's here. I don't know if you've ever seen her online, Joe, but this is Nan Gallagher. She is a medical attorney from New Jersey, and she's come on to this show once or twice with Andrew Myers, and she's been on some other people's YouTubes kind of to answer other questions as well. It's good to see you. She goes by Lawferio on Twitter and here on YouTube.
Great. No, I'll have to check her out though.
She is so witty. You would really appreciate her. So she does a little bit of everything as far as all different types of court procedures, but she does it for doctors and for hospitals. So it could be anything from malpractice to criminal. We just love having her. She's a lot of fun. So yeah, Dragonfly says she's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad you're here, Nan, to watch. Glad to have you. So when looking at the case in its entirety, if you're bringing this up to somebody who doesn't know anything about it, what's the thing that you typically would say to someone who doesn't know and you're trying to bring it up just in conversation?
What do you mean? Like the most provocative part of the case, or
the thing that would make would make someone's eyebrows just shoot 3 inches up their forehead?
I guess to me the biggest thing would be the fact that the police that were in the home were not cooperative. We're trying to destroy evidence. We're trying to the Google search about how long to die in the snow, getting rid of the dog, selling the home, redoing the floors. I mean, where a fellow cop died, like we touched on earlier, they always cover. It's like a gang. It's like whatever it is. They're very close knit group, and you always see cops covering for each other. And to have these group of cops in the house that are completely sort of doing the opposite of what they're supposed to be doing, to me is, I think maybe that's the heart of what the case is about. I mean, it just draws so much questions, what the hell's going on? Yeah,
there's a lot of suspicious behavior on the part of witnesses. And, I'm sure you deal with this plenty, but this is the first time, I'm not an attorney, but I am a nerd and I love watching this kind of stuff. So, I have never seen the credibility of Celebrite questioned like this before. Usually, Celebrite is a big part of what helps convict people. And here, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's usually pretty straightforward. It's, it is what it is. You got an expert kind of explaining it, and it's.
Yeah, unbelievable. Charlie brought up the DA's statement. Did you see District Attorney Morrissey prepare and release what I don't know whether to call it a press release or what, but he was sitting at his desk. There was no actual no press present. Nobody was there to ask him questions live. And this is prior to the first trial, but he gave out material information prior to it coming out in trial. Have you ever seen? Oh yeah, a lot of people are referring to it as the hostage video. Have you seen that video? Have you seen anything like that before, where a prosecutor is doing something like that?
I don't know if I've seen it. It sounds kind of familiar, but I can't place it exactly.
I'll send it to you in an email. It's very interesting and so interesting now that there are a couple. I know of at least one law school that has used that for their classes as a what not to do.
It's surprising because usually you don't see prosecutors making public statements about cases that are about to happen. I mean, they might issue like a written press release, or sometimes the U.S. attorneys do a written press release, but it's very kind of limited. And it's typically afterwards. It's either after an arrest or after a conviction. But no, you don't really see prosecutors talking about a case like that's about to go to trial at all.
And typically the extent of it, if anything, is we have a suspect. The suspect is in custody. We are charging him with X, Y, and Z. If you or anyone you know has any additional information, please call this hotline, or or something like that. It's not speaking to material information.
Right.
And in that video, he's saying that he was wanting, to kind of dispel any rumors and stuff like that. So yeah, he was really getting into the details. So I'll be sure to send that to you. I'd love to get your thoughts on that eventually.
Well, yeah, but even without seeing it, just it's definitely not usual. I mean, it's also not too usual to have special prosecutors. I've seen it a few times, but to have the DA decide that nobody in my office is capable of handling this case and that we've got to outsource it and pay some defense lawyer.
Right. And they've got a whole office of prosecutors.
Yeah.
Readily available who are already collecting a salary.
Yeah. I mean, to me, if I was a prosecutor in that office, or if I was Adam Lally, I would feel like this is kind of a slap in the face to me. This is a vote of no confidence that we're not capable of handling this case. So you had to bring in Hank Brennan.
Certainly. A really good question from Running on Caffeine here. Have you had experience obtaining Sallyport video or, any kind of police department footage? Are there any issues in your experience with the metadata or late discovery or edited video? Because that is going on here quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I've heard some of that too. I mean, with the inverted and the lack of giving over the full video and pieces. Yeah, so I have had experience getting Sallyport video. Very often it's something that you would just get as automatic discovery. I mean, sometimes before you even have to file a discovery motion, a prosecutor will have that. They'll have the booking video, and it'll all be sort of along the same lines. I mean, it's from the police station. It's usually pretty readily available. So yes, and there's usually not much of a fight to get it, and it's usually given over pretty quickly. In terms of metadata or whether videos are edited, if there's, first of all, look, I'd look over the video, I'd look over it with the client. Sometimes it is what it is because we kind of know, like, all right, there's no real issues. But then there's times when either the client, says it's not what it looks like, or I think something's off and it's worth going to get an expert. So there's a couple experts I've used who are like forensic video experts, and they kind of review things, and whether it's the metadata or just looking at the video to see if there's any indications of editing or things that might not be normal. Yeah, sometimes you do, but I've not had any real fights over getting that stuff. You know, typically you file it, and sometimes before the judge even orders it, the prosecutor will look at your motion and the request, and they'll say, yeah, that's a reasonable request. We can get that for you.
Okay, so it's not something that 3 years down the road you're typically still submitting motions for.
Not typically, no. And again, a lot of times you get it without even having to file a motion because it's pretty standard discovery.
Right. It's automatic. It's part of, your typical evidence. It's
Right, part of the
typical evidence.
prosecution's ethical obligations to turn over.
Right. So when you see excuses come forward such as, well, the defense didn't specifically submit a motion for it, or you see an excuse such as, well, we don't have it anymore, it doesn't exist anymore, whether it's been deleted or overwritten or something like that, you don't really buy it.
I don't really buy it, but there's been times where something's been lost or destroyed. Like, I've had cases where video, usually it's not from the police station. Usually it's like, let's say the police got a video from somewhere else, and then somehow the CD got lost. Like maybe they got a surveillance footage and it got lost. If that happens, then you always file a motion to dismiss. Usually it doesn't get dismissed because the standard in Massachusetts is that you have to prove that there was either some somebody did it on purpose or that it was really reckless rather than like a negligence thing. So a lot of times what happens is the judge won't dismiss a case because of it, but they'll give an instruction to the jury that the jury can make an inference against the prosecution for things that are lost or destroyed.
Gotcha. I think I've heard that before where, if there's missing evidence of any kind, then, okay, jury, look at this and automatically count it as points toward the defense. Like this is in their favor, so to speak.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. So have you watched, we talked in the back room a little bit about Karen's growing defense team. I introduced you very briefly to Mark Betterow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, Autonomous Anonymous, for making this photo, by the way.
I was wondering. I was like, wow, this guy's got a background. Is this his marketing thing or?
Yes, no. We all, got very used to having him readily available to ask all our questions to on YouTube. And now that he is representing Karen as part of her defense team, or at least hopefully he's about to be, provided that this Pro Hoc Vice gets signed. But that being said, he is no longer able to come and humor us all on the internet. So somebody made that, and I thought that was hilarious with the bat signal.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Have you watched any of Alessi's arguments before the court in this case?
Not really. Just maybe like bits, lines, kind of.
Yeah, little bits and pieces. Do you have a general opinion of his approach or anything like that?
I don't think I've seen enough of it to really give an opinion. No. Remind me, what was his role in this?
So he was brought in a couple months ago. We're not sure of the specific role. He offered his services pro bono. He is also from New York. He is part of a global law firm called DL Piper. And they represent like Fortune 500 companies and stuff like that. Our speculation collectively, just as a group who watches this case as closely as we do, we think that not only has he been very effective just in the courtroom, but he may also be doing some stuff in the background to assist with any civil litigation to come in the future.
Oh, okay. You mean coming from Karen Reed as a plaintiff, or?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But he's been very impressive so far. We've all really appreciated his methodical approach. His arguments, he'll even give you a little outline of what he's going to argue before he starts. So he'll tell you what he's going to tell you, then he tells you, and then he tells you what he told you. That kind of thing. And we really have liked that a whole lot. Yeah, Jim. Yeah, pro bono from DLA Piper. Yeah. He's been very, very good. If you get some free time, make sure you kind of check out some of that. I think you'll like him a lot. So
Yeah, I'll take a look.
well, I have taken up about an hour of your time, and I really, really appreciate you coming to kind of answer some of our questions. And if if you ever need, if there's ever something that this girl from Florida can do for you, please, reach out and let me know as well. But guys, I hope that you make sure that you follow Attorney Simons. He's got a couple really great pages online called Not Guilty. He's very funny. He's got a lot of great insights. Sherry says, "Come back. Those 60 minutes flew by." It really can.
Yeah, no, I had fun.
If
If you wanna, if you want to have me back sometime, maybe we can coordinate. And no, this is fun. I mean, like I said, I don't know as much just because I have a practice, so it's kind of hard, got a full-time thing. But it's very captivating, and I'm really glad that the spotlight remains on this. And I hope that it not only has a positive impact for Karen Reed, but I hope that that some of these corrupt people that are involved will get the justice they deserve too, and that we try to get. Because really the justice system has no place for this stuff. So I'm glad that.
Definitely.
I'm sorry that it took this to bring this to the spotlight, but sometimes bad things can end up having good outcomes. So hopefully that's the case here.
Definitely. And I would love to see some like top to bottom reform happening, maybe a little bit in the judicial process, maybe a lot in law enforcement, but you're right. This is really highlighting a lot of issues that are bringing outcomes that just don't seem just,
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for doing your part, and for everybody that's on here for, doing their part and keeping the attention, vocalizing that this isn't okay. And I think every little bit helps.
Yeah, we're going to keep getting the word out there. We've all been, working night and day on keeping attention on this, and we so much appreciate your time. And guys, I have pinned at the top of the chat if you would like to donate toward Karen Reed's defense fund. You can click that little link there. So yeah, people are saying they're not going anywhere. We're gonna keep on at it. So
Good.
Well, thank you again, Attorney Simons. I really appreciate having you. And yeah, I could have just talked to you all day. I'm glad that at the last minute we were kind of able to throw this together.
Yeah, me too. And thank you very much for having me, Britt. And maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Anytime. Well, you take care. Have a great rest of your Friday.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Oh, we like him. Yeah, I definitely want to have him back soon. He's awesome. So guys, anytime I have somebody who practices in Massachusetts, I don't like to put them in positions where they could be speaking disparagingly about somebody they could make an argument in front of one day, i.e. Judge Canone, So, for the most part, I'll keep my questions with him kind of geared a certain way. But yeah, he absolutely is of the opinion that there are some serious issues going on here. He and I actually threw this together last night that he wanted to come on, and then I sent him an email back asking what time, and then this morning he said, "Well, how about 1 o'clock for an hour?" I'm like, "Oh well, I haven't told anybody this is happening." So I'm so glad that all of you were able to pop in and give Joe an audience, because he is 100% deserving of it. I can 1,000% see David Yannetti's reflection in Joe. And one of these days, I want to have Joe back to kind of talk a little bit more about his personal background and what made him become an attorney. Because I think you would be very interested in hearing his story. So we'll have him back one of these days to go a little deeper into that. So Dragonfly, let me hang on. I'm gonna see if I can type his page into the chat. It's just not dot guilty. And that's on YouTube, TikTok. I don't know what other platforms he's on. Now I feel bad. And then if you ever do need a good lawyer, I have spoken briefly with one of his associates, and they are just such nice people. So if you do need a good attorney, consider his office for sure. Dennis, I'm so glad that you're here today. Glad to have you. Hey, Dickie. Hey, Maggie. Z, that's a great point. Imagine if the worldwide Free Karen Reed supporters came to Dedham, it would be shut down more than that one verdict watch day. Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to be able to maybe put together more national standouts as well, because I mean, I've just got to say it is so expensive to make that kind of a trip. When I came up last month to Boston, between the hotel, the airfare, food, everything, I mean, it is not cheap. Just saying. Silent One, hey, so glad that you joined in. Please consider sharing this stream, by the way, guys, with a friend. This is not a secret club. Oh, sorry, guys. My dogs are barking. Just a second. I have 3, so when all 3 of them are barking, it's not quiet at all. Oh, thank you for bringing up Bettero again. Oh no, I lost it. I lost it in the chat. That's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys this Bettero picture again, because I just thought this was awesome. I want to have, like, that orchestral Hans Zimmer Batman theme song going, like from The Dark Knight and everything. So yeah, this is going to be memorialized in the Free Karen Reed community for sure. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for now. We are going to come back when this motion to dismiss comes out. So haha, and I bitch about gas and mileage. I got it easy. I mean, I wouldn't say that you have it easy, Scott. I mean, you are doing the mostest. I would say, as far as time that you put into, like, the other people, the other creators, plus going to the standouts. I mean, I don't know when you're sleeping, my friend, between being on Melanie Little and being on the Glare and Turtle Boy and all that. I mean, you're putting in a ton of hours, probably more hours than there even are in a day. You're packing them in like sardines. So Sherry was born in St. Louis, but lives 14 hours away. Okay. I didn't know that's where you were from, Sherry. Oh, yeah. Don't forget Court. Cheryl with an S. Oh, my God. Yeah, definitely. Scott says he hasn't slept since 2023. I mean, I stay up a whole lot, and all I'm doing is live streams and memes and, trying to put educational material together in a way that is at least somewhat entertaining. so it's not so doom and gloom all the time. Yes, Dennis, I completely agree with you. And just as we are all proud to stand by your side too, Dennis. Shock and horror. Where did it go? Here we go. Exactly. He will hold on to it just to spite us. Yeah, probably. But yeah, guys, please make sure that you are back later today. I'm going to be keeping a close eye now that I'm not in the middle of interviewing an attorney on this motion to dismiss. We're going to come back here and read it together. Definitely go to maybe Melanie Little's channel if you want some really good legal analysis on that. I haven't seen it yet, Dickie. It hasn't come out in the past. I mean, as of an hour ago, it had not come out yet. So I checked right before I started this stream, and we did not have it yet. So I'm gonna pop back on, even if it's just me. I shot Mark a message, Mark Mazamedia, to see if he's free and if he wants to go over the motion to dismiss together. So who knows? Maybe he can do it. Maz is one of those, like, we'll figure it out maybe a day in advance. And there are other people who that's not their style at all. Like DJ, he likes to plan things weeks in advance. So it's been really interesting over the past couple months trying to kind of like get to know everybody's different styles. So we'll see. Oh, did she really, Dickie? She was having a StreamYard problem? Well, shoot. What are we gonna do? I mean, I will host Melanie. Like, she can just come on my stream and I will stay off the screen altogether. Like, I'll just send her a link to my StreamYard and give her the motion to dismiss and let her go on about it. So, oh, right. Nan has been saying, guys, that it might not come until late in the day. She said this to me before as well. But yeah, you're right. It might not even be posted by the court for several days as well. It's just getting submitted from the defense today. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm gonna hop off. We will play this next one by ear as far as the motion to dismiss. And also make sure that you come back on Sunday at 7 Eastern time. We are going to have DJ from Calling All Beings hanging out with us. And you know that he is just the life of the party. So it's going to be a really fun stream. Nan, thank you so much for being here. Scott, Sherry, Amy, we appreciate all of you. Bob, thanks for being here. Jessica, this channel would not be channeling if it weren't for people like you guys. All right, y'all. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. If you have any kind of things that you want to submit to me, I created an email for the channel. It's just BritHappensChannel@gmail.com. So if you have anything that you want to send to me, I'm going to go ahead and recycle Melanie's statement that even if she doesn't respond to everything, she's at least going to see it. So you can send things there. I'll go ahead and put that up, as well as other places where you can find me. So, yeah, if you haven't linked up with me on Twitter or TikTok yet, those are the means and methods. If you would like to support the channel, there are means and methods by which you can do that scrolling below. So I'll leave that going for a little bit here at the end. All right, y'all. Thank you again for being here. Wouldn't be here without you. Peace, love, and butt dials.